All right, are you ready? 2 regrets of a 55-year-old retired software engineer. He worked for a Fortune 500 company and wished somebody had told him this earlier. This is pretty much most of my life is always this, which is just, I wish I would have known something earlier. Is this photo chat Jippity? Oh no, it's apparently it's real. I just assume everything I see is ChatGPT. I have started thinking about my long-term plan and what I want to do in my life. Soon, I will share those with you. But as part of the plan, I decided to make a plan to talk with different kinds of programmers. My main goal is to learn as much as possible from them. I also decided to write fundamentally and unique content for my followers and readers on Medium so that they can also get benefited from my initiative. All right, the build-up. Foreplay over. Let's go. This week I talked with a 55-year-old retired software developer who started his career when he was 35. Unusually late start, right? Is that a late start? Or is that normal these days? I guess 20 years ago that would be, if they're 55 today, that means they started 20 years ago. That would be kind of unusual, right? Today I don't think it's very unusual. I think there's a lot of people coming in much later in life than the norm was 20 years ago. You started at 29. Yeah, I guess professionally, I started when I was 25. Right? I started professionally at 36. Yeah, I think today, I think in the last 10 years, this number has greatly changed. Yeah, I think wow, a lot of people started in their 30s. That's awesome to see, by the way. I started at 14. Professionally? Damn, you're one other person I know. A friend of mine named Brent also started in his teens. Crazy. All right, anyways, the plan was he would give me 30 minutes, but when we finished our conversation, it was more like an hour and a half. I enjoyed our session. He said he might feel uncomfortable if anyone he knows reads this article. Yeah, that's how it always goes. So I am not disclosing his name, but for the sake of this article, let's call him Mr. Barry, who buried these nuts. One of my questions was if he had any regrets about his long job life as a software developer. He gave an excellent long answer. I am summarizing it to the 2 main points, and here are those. Okay, so I'm actually pretty excited about this. You should always try to listen to people that have been where you're walking. Do you know what I mean? If you're going somewhere and someone has already walked it, listen, because even if their advice is bad, there's probably a couple good tips in there, right? I always say the phrase, eat the fish, spit the bones. You know what I mean? Eat the fish, spit the bones. How do you know it wasn't just AI? We're about to find. Pressure. This is the most important lesson for me. He told me he had 2 friends, John and Romy, of course fake names, working in the same company. The company was making a SaaS software. The product was new and all the employees had to take extra pressure because they wanted to launch it before Christmas, and the time was insufficient. So they had to do overtime. My first real job, as I like to refer to it, I did a lot of overtime. Now the main part, Romy used to take more pressure than John. Romy used to do overtime if necessary, but John never did extra work. Interesting. I wonder where this is going to go. Now, when the management needed to do extra work, they asked Romy to do so, because they knew John would never respond to this type of request, and they couldn't rely on John. These incidents happened to him too. He couldn't say no to them. So he told me, the more pressure you take, the more pressure you will get. Okay. Yeah, I can buy that. I can most certainly buy this. This is true from everything I've seen too. Right? I also experienced the same thing. But then I asked if developers don't take pressure, wouldn't they get fired? He replied, that's true. But in his experience, those who can say no to extra pressure win in the long run. I asked how. He replied he saw around 10 to 20% of these people get fired. They managed to land another job within 2 to 3 months, sometimes with a better salary. And most of these developers don't get fired because they leave the toxic environment before the toxic environment fires them. Interesting perspective. So I guess I kind of land somewhere in the middle, right? Like if there's a big thing that's happening at my job. So Netflix has been typically, by the way, work at Netflix, by the way, has typically been a really great job thus far. I really have had very few pressure points. I've had very few times in which I have to do stuff. And so when it comes time to it and your job doesn't do this all the time, there's very rare crunch. I feel like I will do crunch. You know what I mean? Like if I have to, if it's time to kick some ass and take some names, if I needed to do that, if my boss said, hey, I need you to just like work as hard as you can and get this thing done as fast as possible, I would do that, right? Just because they've invested so long and they haven't demanded it regularly of me. So I think there's definitely some wisdom in here that is kind of missing, which is it depends on the situation. I will go out of my way to keep my employer happy because they've gone out of their way to keep me happy as well. Now, if that relationship isn't, if it's not going back and forth, then yeah, it's a bad environment. Yeah, there's layers to pressure. There's always layers to pressure. And so I would definitely not go one way or the other. But that one job that I had it all the time, I look back on that and also think, hey, that was the time that I became the developer of who I am today, is because of the pressure. So I just never know how to take this one, which I think you got to learn how to set boundaries, but at the same time, it can make you into a great developer going through some seasons of pressure. So I just don't know. I never know which way to fall on this one. I never know, because I don't think there's a cut and dry answer. I think some people will tell you, always go for it. I think some people will tell you, don't ever do it. And then there's just some middle ground that exists where it's like sometimes you should do it, sometimes you shouldn't do it. And if it's a toxic environment, the problem is the word toxic gets just so overused in our society, or at least in the West, that I don't even know when someone uses the term toxic, I don't know what it even means. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean something concrete anymore in my head. And so it's very difficult for me to like know what it means. When they say toxic, does that mean there's seasons of crunch? Does it mean that the managers pressure you in a pretty poor way to do things? Does it mean that the management doesn't do anything but tells you to do everything? Like, what does it mean? Like, well, what are you trying to say? Boss asks you to do work. See, that's the problem. Is it depends on who you ask what toxic means. So I like to use more crisp definitions of things. But I like this point overall. If you are working in a place that is just crunch, consider somewhere different, right? Learn to say no. And even if you're working in a place that isn't crunch, learn to say no. It's very important. Not taking enough risks. Have you ever seen, let's see, How I Met Your Mother? No, I haven't. This is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I have probably seen it more than 10 times. Yeah, I'm a freak of this show. In season 1, episode 21, Lily quoted an emotional dialogue when she was leaving her fiancé for her lifelong dream to become an artist. There are certain things in life where you know it's a mistake, but you don't really know it's a mistake, because the only way to know that it really is a mistake is to make that mistake and go. Yep, that was my mistake. So really, the bigger mistake would be to not make the mistake, because then you'll go about your whole life not knowing whether it was a mistake or not. I don't necessarily think this is great advice right here. Just so you know, How I Met Your Mother is not necessarily great advice. I love this. Probably not that. Why am I talking about this scene? When Mr. Barry was talking about his career and his life, I could only think and feel this scene. After 10 to 12 years of working as a developer, he got an offer to work at a startup with the same salary he was getting in his job, but he was a senior developer and the company had stock options. He thought working in a startup was risky because it could all fail. He was right. Working in a startup is always risky, but after 3 years, the startup was valued at over $100 million. He regrets it till this day because it was a 50-50 decision, and at the last minute, he rejected the offer. He wished that he had more courage and took the risk. Yeah, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. You know, if the situation was reversed, he would have been like, wow, so glad I did that. You should always take risk. And what I mean by that is that it's calculated risk, right? And so when I was younger, I was about a year and a half into my career, and a guy named Jeff gave me a call and said, hey, I saw you've been using RxJS, and I'd like to talk to you about using RxJS at this startup. And I said, okay, well, since it's a personalized message, I will be glad to talk to you. So we got on the phone. We talked for a long time. And then he offered me a job. And I said yes. And that's how I started working at Netflix. Now, the thing about this job was that my wife was 36 weeks pregnant. We knew nobody in the Silicon Valley. I've never left Montana. And it was a huge risk, because I knew nobody. Like, we were going to get there, and we were not even going to know where to have a baby at. And it was a giant risk, and it was more risky than I even knew about, because I had no idea about kids. Like, I knew nothing. But if I wouldn't have done that, if I wouldn't have taken that risk, I think I would have looked back in life and been a little bit sad about that. So I can totally understand why you should risk. You know, when people say this, it's because you don't have any clue what it's like to have a kid or to leave your comfort zone. You actually have you have no clue. You don't know anything. You don't. It is very, very difficult. Taking a job at a company in which their entire culture deck says that they will fire you fast while you're moving to a state you've never been, while you're also in a place in which is completely like super expensive. Your wife's not going to be working. You have 2 Labradors. You have just absolutely no clue, and you're about to just completely lose it all potentially. You have no clue at all. Like, of course that is difficult. It is a very stressful decision having your first kid away from family in a brand new job in which says they fire fast. That's a lot. It was extremely hard to find an apartment due to the 2 Labradors. Extremely hard to find an apartment. It was the smallest I could find a place was. It took so long to figure that out, but every place we went was like $200 per dog per month if you wish to have a dog. And so now I'm sitting here thinking about, do I get rid of my dogs? I love my dogs. I don't want to get rid of my dogs. What do I do? Right? Like it took a long time, and we're sitting here thinking, should we do this? I had a great job. It was tough. It was real tough. It was honestly one of the hardest times of my life. And I know that you think that, oh, you're working on Netflix, it's easy. I'm pretty sure that if anybody said they're going to move away from everyone they know into a job that openly claims they fire fast, and you have absolutely no measurement if you're a good or bad software, and you're about to have a baby, you wouldn't say, oh, that's a simple decision. Of course. Psh, that's an easy decision. No, it's a hard ass decision. And it was emotional. But we made it because we said there's only one time in life we can make this decision. That's before we have a kid. Because after we have our kid, we're not going anywhere. And it was true. I stayed in the Valley for 6 years until COVID, and then I moved to South Dakota afterwards. And now I'm in COVID. I did that minus the baby. It was tough. Yeah, it's still tough no matter what if you go to a new area. You should always take some level of risk. Yeah. Done. Let's see, did to China mainland from UK. Really? That is challenging. That's a much different world. Yeah. Wife hates the new place. And this is honestly, our marriage went under a lot of pressure. So our marriage wouldn't be what it is today without that move. So I look back at that, and the biggest takeaway that I got from it, besides saying I work at Netflix, by the way, was the fact that my wife and I's marriage is significantly better. I'm very happy that I was able to do that. So I was happy about the pressure. Do you have any regrets for that? No, I don't have any regrets. I don't try to live with regrets. The only regrets I have are people who I've hurt. Right? I personally relate to a lot of this. Yeah. No, I know you do too, because you've also moved around the country and have done this. I know your story. There's people that I've hurt, and there's 2 people I can think of extremely specifically. There's a kid named Max in my high school who clearly had autism, super smart, skipped grades, and I was not nice to him. The second person, her name was Destiny, mistreated her as a woman, treated her more like an object than I did than a person, and I found both of them later in life. Sought them out, found them, and said sorry to both of them personally, because they deserved it. They're people, they're humans. They feel things, and they deserved a sorry. And Max was most surprised. Max was probably more surprised than Destiny to this day. Destiny was just like, oh, that was very nice of you. Thanks for letting me know that I'm actually worth something. But Max was just like, you're saying sorry to me? I was like, yeah, I owe you, right? So it's hard, So, now, yeah, the thing is you can only say a sorry. If someone doesn't accept your apology, it's on them at that point. Honestly, you know what's worse than living with you've hurt somebody? Is living with not forgiving somebody. Real talk. Lack of forgiveness will eat your heart. I didn't do the 12 steps. And so I always I will always strive for forgiveness, no matter how much somebody hurts me. I will strive for forgiveness. When I was younger, I know. Sorry, I know this is odd stuff, but when I was younger, I also wrote a list of everybody that I had a really rough high school experience with. And I can still think of a couple people that just like they irked me beyond belief. One person, if I still think about it, I can still break out in sweat. Just like I get such an adrenal reaction. But I went through that list and I kept it for a long time. And anytime I got really upset, I'd remind myself that here is a list of people that I have forgiven, despite them not saying sorry. I've forgiven them no matter what. And because you have to live life that way. I don't know. Yeah. I'm sorry for a VS Code every day and not following through with Neil. It's okay. Anyways. Why is school such a traumatic? Well, because school is pooling collective ignorance. You have to forgive. You will find forgiveness is equally as powerful for the person you forgive as it is for you. You will taint your soul for the rest of your life without forgiveness. All right, let's keep on going. Here we go. Now he believes taking calculated risks is necessary. Yep. Then he quoted Zuckerberg's one of his most popular quotes. The biggest risk is not taking any risk. Yes. In a world that is changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. I agree with this. Playing defense loses. I've always thought about that, which is anytime I just know all I need to do is just keep doing what I'm doing and I'm going to win, like especially in like video games or anything like that, I always lose because I go from playing offense to playing defense. And this is true in basketball. It's true in everything that I've ever played in my life. Anytime I go from offense to defense to just keep winning, I lose every single time. You always have to keep going. You cannot just try to wait it out. He gave me this advice so strongly as I am his daughter, and he wanted me to take risky opportunities. He is a nice man. But we talked about many more topics about life, work-life balance, and many more. But these two regrets hit me hard, which is why I've shared these 2 points. I love this. This is a great story. Honestly, these are really good points, which is learning to say no and taking risks that are calculated. Very, very good ones. Very, very good. I actually really appreciated this article. Got a W key on Fortnite. Yeah, you got a W key in IRL. Absolutely. Would you forgive people who write curly braces on new lines? Even them. Even people who write curly braces and else statements all on new lines. I'm willing to forgive. What advice do I have? Well, I always will. I know. There was a hesitation. I don't know about my advice. I don't know how, I don't know if I'm old enough to give great advice. Wait, what? No, that is non-forgivable. Yeah. I don't know how well my advice would be, honestly. I think I kind of gave most of it, which is I think pursuing forgiveness no matter the crime is good on an individual basis. I think it works good for work. I think it works good in your personal life. My only other really great piece of advice is there is no such thing as 50-50. If me and my beautiful wife were to go 50-50, we'd both be disappointed. And so I never go 50-50. When you get home, ask her what she needs. I don't do it enough and I need to do it more. 50-50 doesn't work. Always being a hundo. Yeah, always be 100, right? You know what I mean? That's my other piece of advice I guess I have. My last piece of advice would be it doesn't matter really what you do, your accomplishments at your job, all those things, those will fade, right? You can be 6 years of amazing work and one fuck up and everybody hates you, right? That's why I really, truly pursue curiosity, because at some point I'll mess up at Netflix and they'll fire me or whatever's going to happen. But I have genuinely loved what I work on and what I do because I try to drive myself with curiosity instead of driving myself with worth, right? Some people program because they want their worth in it, right? They want to put themselves as someone who makes a mark. I don't try to make a mark in that category. I do it because I am curious, and I'm going to keep on fueling and making curiosity a real thing. You know what I mean? Tom's a genius. I get that. I'm not that person. So guess what? The name is the Primeagen.